Afternoon, Peter, says Sean in Bicester. The Grinches are the senior cabinet clowns in this awful government, and the Muppets are the deluded people who voted for them when things were just starting to turn around with the Conservatives, says Sean in Bicester. Thank you to Nick. He says, Grinch of the Year, Sadiq Khan. A man who has single-handedly turned our capital city into a no-go zone hellhole where only one community are looked after, and it is not the white British community, in Nick's opinion. Well, lots happening politically, including Elon Musk. Speaking of foreign influence, he is an American, and he is someone who possibly could give Reform UK quite a lot of money. It was interesting, Tim Montgomery, the previously Conservative campaigner, now Reform UK member, said it could be as much as £20 million. Gawain Towler is a Westminster veteran. He used to work for Reform UK. And Gawain, I wonder how likely you think it is that Elon Musk could give this money, and how much you think he should give.
Honestly, I don't really think it's that likely he's going to give a large sum of money. But money begets money. The talk of money brings money. And so therefore, I think the very idea that was floated in the Times a couple of weeks ago that he was going to give Reform money has already kick-started other fundraising, which is very helpful to Reform. I think to a certain extent, what's more important, if you listen to what Farage said when he came out of that meeting with Musk the other week in Mar-a-Lago, is they talked very deeply about the operation in Pennsylvania. And I think what would be possibly even more useful to Reform is where we are weak is our ground game. People work very, very hard, but without the background data, without the knowledge of where people voted over the last 20 years, we've only been going for 3 years, 20+%, 22% I think average now. We've only been going for 3 years to get that data and use the algorithms that Musk was using in those campaign key states in America. That, in fact, knowing how to use that kit, getting hold of that kit as a donation in kind, that's actually maybe more important than pure cash.
And that's a really interesting point. Pennsylvania, of course, a swing state. Joe Biden himself had a lot of family links there. He grew up in Scranton. Kamala Harris, of course, had no links there in Pennsylvania for lots of reasons, not just those, but actually many more to do with immigration, to do with the price of groceries, to do with lots of different things, inflation, and so on, went to the Republicans. So specifically with Pennsylvania, just to illustrate that point maybe a little bit more for our viewers and listeners who might not be sort of totally familiar with the ground game, the point of the on what Musk and his people could perhaps teach Reform UK.
The point is being able to target voters, to learn who they are, where they live, what are they interested in, what are the key messages and key details that make them wake in the morning, make them happy, make them annoyed. And being able to understand who the people are who may vote for Reform, if we can reach them. That's what that data can provide. The other parties have spent years building up databases. We just haven't. And for us to compete properly on the ground game, that would be the most vital thing that we could possibly do. We're brilliant at the air war, as you're well aware. What we're really good is doing the media stuff. But what we're not so good, despite the hard work of our volunteers, is knowing where people live. Being able to reach
and that is absolutely essential. Yeah,
in the modern political game, yes, 100%.
Just speaking of the American side of things, we know that Lord Mandelson, the new ambassador to the United States, he'll take up his post next year. Well, he has been called, and I quote, an absolute moron by the co-chairman of Donald Trump's re-election campaign. And we have Kim Darroch, who's the former ambassador, today saying, look, this is just what it's going to be like. This is going to be what Trump 2.0 is like. He says this is what life is going to be like under Trump 2.0, like a 24/7 barroom brawl. You get this sort of stuff, Lord Darroch says, going on all the time. You need to have a thick skin. You need to manage it and to get through it, to weather it, as it were. So Lord Mandelson is a very experienced politician. I'm sure he can cope with this kind of stuff. What do you think about Lord Mandelson as a choice? How do you think, given your knowledge of the Trump people, and how they're going to react to him?
To be honest, Kim Darroch, when he was the ambassador over there, he was a disaster. He almost actively campaigned against Trump when he was in that role. So therefore, that was an absolute disaster at the beginning of Trump's last term. I think Mandelson has the thick skin that Darroch mentions. He has the ability to mix it up, and he's also personally very charming. He didn't get called the Prince of Darkness because he was bad at his job. He got called it because he was very good at his job. And it is notable that since Trump's election, one of the very few people who's actually recognized the value of Farage's relationship with Trump is Mandelson. He has raised it. Look, there isn't a left or even centrist politician in Britain who hasn't slagged off Trump over the last 10 years. You'd be lucky to find anybody who hasn't tweeted something disobliging. But with Mandelson, you've got somebody who has a skill set. He is able to mix it. He has huge international experience, and he is not he's not unaware that there are other routes into the White House and the Trump team and the broader Trump cabinet. So I think that is something that is going to be very relevant. I mean, honestly, if you look around the Labour world, the milieu in which Keir Starmer lives, can you think of anybody more suitable? I can't.
It's a very good point, actually. Nigel Farage himself suggested at one point, before he became an MP, that he could be the ambassador. And I wonder if you could sort of give us your thoughts, your experience, obviously, of Nigel Farage in terms of what his role may well be in a Trump administration, even, obviously unofficially, but as some sort of conduit. Clearly, Keir Starmer has made it clear that he doesn't want to go through unofficial channels. He wants to go through official channels. But I think we're going to be in a really, really interesting situation, and Gawain, you may disagree with this, where Nigel Farage is sometimes going to know things before the government do because of his links to the Trump administration.
I think that's certainly the case. He will. It just will. Over the last, since 2016, Nigel's been a friend of Trump. And over that period of time, he hasn't just got to know Trump himself, but he's got to know many people in Trump's coming in cabinet. There is nobody better placed in the UK to get messages across or receive messages. And though Mandelson no doubt will do a best job he can, I think Nigel's a far better place. And I don't know if you saw a couple of weeks ago after PMQs, Starmer crossed the floor and went up to talk to Farage.
I did see that, yes. A number of people were asking me, what did they talk about? To which I said, I wasn't there, I don't know. Maybe you know.
Precisely. But I think the suggestions are it was about the US. But it shows actually a little bit of flexibility on Starmer that we're not used to. There's no way that any of the Tory leaders post-16 would have ever have done something like that. They saw Farage as an anathema. Starmer realised with a bit of statesmanship that he may be an anathema politically at home, but if you want to get on with the States, just maybe with the incoming president, being polite and civil to Farage isn't such a bad idea.
Yeah, and I think sorry, Gawain, go ahead.
I think that I think is a key point. And as I say, Mandelsson's already flagged this up. Farage obviously speaks, and there's no doubt, and we're aware, the Chagos Islands issue is something that is very high on Nigel's agenda. It's also very high on the State Department's agenda and Trump's agenda. We see an attempt to rush it through before Trump sits in the Oval Office, but I think that would be a very foolish move on part of the government, particularly with suspicions of getting a little bit too close to China. So little things like that, the ability to have a back channel, even if it's only a very subtle one, cannot be a bad thing. It's called realpolitik and it's called statesmanship. And we, as a country, desperately need a little bit of that because we seem to have been run on dreams and idiocies for far, far too long.
Gawain, you may find yourself in a slightly strange position of actually agreeing with Diane Abbott. She has told, the Labour MP has told Times Radio, our colleagues over there, that she doubts Peter Mandelson will be effective as the US ambassador. So I wonder whether that is something you agree with. Speaking to Ed Vasey about whether Peter Mandelson is a good choice as the UK ambassador to Washington, she said, we've seen in terms of the appointments into the general election a lot of what you might call Blairite retread. This is what it is, and Mandelson is more of the same. I'm not so sure Mandelson will be as effective as the US ambassador. I don't know if you've seen, there have been stories in the press over the weekend that some friend or supporter of Trump has been quite rude about Peter Mandelson. And as is someone very close to Trump, you realise how well Mandelson will come across when he finally turns up as ambassador. But perhaps you think he'll do a better job, and maybe Diane Abbott's wrong. I don't know. What do you think?
I actually think he will do a better job. I knew him when he was over in Brussels as a commissioner, and his ability to speak on behalf of the UK, even though he was taking a position that was an anathema to mine, was very clear. And I go back to the point: David Lammy or Peter Mandelson. Who would you choose? I mean, seriously.
Yeah. No.
Who would you choose from the Labour world who could do a better job? I can't think of anybody.
I'm not sure I would
really can't.
I'm not sure I would trust. I'm not sure I would trust David Lammy to run a Welk stall, to be perfectly frank.
We have to deal with the situation we have got, rather than a dream world where you have somebody like Lord Palmerston reawaking from the dead and doing a job like that. So it's not going to happen. So as we have what we've got, we have the personnel we have, and it is. You've got to remember Rishi brought back, or not Rishi, but when Haig was brought back from the dead to do foreign ministry duties.
And then David Cameron.
Yeah. So this sort of international relations job often requires somebody with a deep well of experience. And you've got to remember, these days, you don't send an ambassador to Washington and not hear from them for 6 weeks because the White Star Line hasn't sent a boat across. You've got things like telephones and emails. So then he's not operating as a sort of plenipotentiary fiefdom. He doesn't have a complete carte blanche. He will be operating within the rules and regulations and within the direction of Number 10 and the Foreign Office. So yes, he's there. Yes, he's good at the charming stuff. Yes, he's good at the dinner parties and the cocktail parties and that diplomatic world. But the actual hard politics will still be run by London, and it will be run by London on a minute-by-minute basis.
Gawain, what do you think of Reform's chances in the various elections coming up in the next little while? We've got the council elections in England, we've got Welsh Senate elections, I still call it the Welsh Assembly, and the Scottish Parliament elections, all within the next couple of years. And I mean, Labour is under a lot of pressure. There's absolutely no doubt about that. We've had some by-elections as well, where both the Conservatives and Reform have done quite well. Starmer's personal approval rating at minus 61%. Do you think it's there for the taking?
There for the taking would be a little bit arrogant, I suspect. The next year's council elections, we don't know what's going to happen because of these suggestions that some of them are going to get pushed back. Labour's been very clever. They want that to happen, but have put it into the hands of Tory council leaders to make those decisions. We've put an awful lot of work and effort into selecting candidates in those councils that are going to be fought next year. I think there's every reason we'll do well and pick up a good number of councillors and start to push through into the English counties. But I think looking at Wales, there is no good reason to think that we wouldn't be challenging to win that election, to be the largest party in the Welsh Assembly.
You think that can happen? You think they can be the largest party? Do you think they'd be the government of Wales?
I have no doubt that that's entirely possible. I have no doubt. I mean, look, it's politics. Everybody can blow up and make a pig's ear of life. But if we don't make any major errors, and if we keep on working, I've seen the quality of some of the people who are bubbling out of the extra 70,000 members that we've picked up in the last 6 months. There's some really, really good people. We're getting excellent advice. There's good leadership on the ground in Wales, and in Scotland, again. You've got to think, in the Holyrood collective of Tories, every single one of them was a Tom Tugendhat supporter. There is, and Labour and the SNP are also looking at Reform in Scotland as a party that can pick up 5-10 seats in Holyrood. No, we are becoming a real voice for people who've been disenfranchised and a real threat to the legacy parties.